At my grandmother's 80th birthday celebration, my sister stood up and announced with a smug smile, "Grandmother, I've decided to sell the lake house you gave me. Daniel and I need the money for our European vacation." Before anyone could respond, my grandmother did something that left the entire family speechless. Before we begin, friends watching this story, please leave a comment telling us which city you are watching from. And don't forget to like and subscribe so this channel can grow and bring you even more interesting stories. That Saturday afternoon, the grand ballroom of the Riverside Country Club was decorated with ivory roses and gold ribbons. The Martinez family had gathered from across the country to celebrate grandmother Eleanor's 80th birthday, a milestone she had insisted on celebrating with all her descendants present. The room buzzed with laughter and the clinking of champagne glasses. A live jazz band played softly in the corner, and the scent of fresh flowers mixed with expensive perfumes filled the air. Along the walls stood elegant tables laden with gourmet catering from the city's finest restaurant. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over guests dressed in their finest attire. At the center of it all sat grandmother Eleanor in a velvet chair that resembled a throne. Despite her age, she was sharp as ever, her silver hair perfectly styled, her eyes missing nothing. She wore a vintage emerald necklace that had been in the family for generations, and her posture was regal and commanding. The family had come from near and far. There were successful doctors, lawyers, and business owners among them. But the gathering wasn't just about celebration. Everyone knew that grandmother Eleanor, though still healthy, had been thinking about her legacy and what she would leave behind. Among the crowd were two granddaughters who couldn't have been more different. Maya, the elder at 32, was quiet and wore a simple navy dress. She had arrived alone, taking the bus from her small apartment across town. Maya worked as a social worker at a non-profit organization helping homeless families. Her salary was modest, barely enough to cover her basic expenses, but she never complained. She had inherited her grandmother's kind eyes and gentle smile. Sienna, 2 years younger, made a grand entrance fashionably late. She wore a designer dress that probably cost more than Maya's monthly rent, and her arm was linked with her boyfriend, Daniel, a personal trainer with perfect hair and an even more perfect smile. Sienna worked in marketing for a tech startup, though everyone whispered she spent more time taking selfies than actually working. She had her phone out constantly, posting stories of the elegant venue and making sure everyone knew she was at an exclusive family event. As the evening progressed, grandmother Eleanor stood up slowly, tapping her champagne glass with a silver spoon. The gentle chiming sound cut through the conversations, and the room fell silent. All eyes turned to the elegant matriarch. "My dear family," she began, her voice still strong and clear despite her age. "Thank you all for being here tonight. 80 years is a long time to walk this earth, and I've been blessed to see my family grow and flourish." She paused, looking around the room with warm eyes that lingered on each face. "As many of you know, I've been thinking about my legacy. Not just the money or properties, but the values I want to pass down. Tonight, I want to announce something special." The room seemed to hold its collective breath. Sienna straightened in her chair, her eyes gleaming with interest. She squeezed Daniel's hand under the table. "I've decided to gift 2 of my most precious properties to my granddaughters, Maya and Sienna," grandmother Eleanor continued. "These aren't just houses. They're pieces of our family history." She turned to Maya first. "Maya, my dear, I'm giving you the brownstone apartment in the city, the one on Maple Street where your grandfather and I first lived when we were newlyweds. It's modest but full of memories." Maya's eyes filled with tears. She stood up and walked to her grandmother, embracing her gently. "Grandmother, I don't know what to say. Thank you so much." Grandmother Eleanor patted her hand warmly, then turned to Sienna. "And Sienna, I'm giving you the lake house. The beautiful cabin on Crystal Lake, where we spent every summer when you girls were children. Do you remember the dock where you used to fish? The fireplace where we roasted marshmallows?" Sienna's face lit up like a Christmas tree. She jumped from her seat, nearly knocking over her champagne glass. "Oh my God, grandmother. The lake house? That property must be worth at least $500,000. She caught herself, trying to look more emotional. "I mean, it holds such special memories." Daniel whispered something in her ear, and Sienna giggled, already pulling out her phone to search for the property value online. Grandmother Eleanor's expression became more serious. "These gifts come with one condition for both of you. These properties have been in our family for decades. They represent our roots, our history. I'm giving them to you not to sell, but to cherish and perhaps one day pass on to your own children. Maya nodded solemnly, understanding the weight of the responsibility. I promise, grandmother. I'll take care of it. Sienna barely seemed to hear the condition, too busy whispering excitedly with Daniel about the property's potential market value. 3 months passed. Maya had moved into the brownstone apartment on Maple Street. The neighborhood wasn't trendy or upscale, but it had character. Her apartment was cozy, with creaky wooden floors that told stories and windows that let in the morning sun perfectly. Maya had kept everything exactly as her grandmother had left it. The vintage furniture, the old photographs on the walls, even the floral curtains her grandmother had sewn by hand decades ago. She would often sit in her grandmother's old reading chair, feeling connected to family history. On weekends, Maya invited grandmother Eleanor over for tea. They would sit together, and the old woman would tell stories about each piece of furniture, each photograph, bringing the past to life. Maya had also started a small tradition of inviting neighbors over for community dinners, just as her grandmother used to do. Meanwhile, Sienna had visited the lake house exactly twice. The first time was to take hundreds of photos for social media, posing on the dock by the fireplace on the porch swing. Her posts were filled with hashtags. The second visit was to show Daniel around and discuss potential. The lake house sat empty most of the time, slowly gathering dust. The garden her grandmother had lovingly maintained began to grow wild. The dock needed repairs that weren't being done. Sienna had hired a cheap property management company that did the bare minimum. But Sienna and Daniel had been busy with other things. They had been planning an elaborate European vacation, 2 months backpacking through France, Italy, Spain, and Greece. They wanted to stay in 5-star hotels, eat at Michelin-starred restaurants, and fly business class. There was just one problem: money. Daniel's personal training business was barely breaking even, and Sienna's salary, while decent, was mostly spent on maintaining her expensive lifestyle: designer clothes, trendy restaurants, luxury gym memberships, and endless beauty treatments. One evening, as they sat in Sienna's downtown apartment looking at travel packages on her laptop, Daniel had an idea. "Babe," he said, putting his arm around her shoulder. "I've been thinking. That lake house your grandmother gave you, it's just sitting there empty, right?" Sienna nodded, scrolling through photos of the Amalfi Coast. "Yeah, so? So, it's worth a lot of money. At least 500,000, probably more. And we need, 50,000 for our dream trip." Daniel's voice was smooth and persuasive. "We could sell it, use what we need for the vacation, and still have plenty left over to invest or whatever." Sienna paused, her finger hovering over the keyboard. "But grandmother said not to sell it. It's a family property." Daniel laughed dismissively. "Come on, Sienna. You're 30 years old. It's your property now. Your grandmother is sweet, but she's from a different generation. They held on to things for sentimental reasons. Our generation is smarter. We understand that experiences matter more than old buildings. Besides, when will you ever actually use it? You hate camping, and there's no good Wi-Fi out there." Sienna bit her lip, thinking. The lake house was beautiful, but Daniel was right. She hadn't been there in months. And that trip to Europe. She could already imagine herself posting photos from Paris, from Rome, from Barcelona. Her followers would go crazy. "You know what?" Sienna said slowly, a smile spreading across her face. "You're absolutely right. It's my house. I can do whatever I want with it. Grandmother will understand. She wants me to be happy, right?" Daniel kissed her cheek. "That's my girl. Smart and beautiful." The next day, Sienna contacted a real estate agent. 2 weeks later, grandmother Eleanor's actual birthday arrived. A smaller, more intimate family dinner at her favorite restaurant, Rosewood Terrace. The private dining room had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city lights. The table was set with fine china and fresh peonies, Eleanor's favorite flowers. Maya arrived early, carrying a carefully wrapped gift. A restored photo album she'd spent weeks working on, filled with old family pictures she'd found in the brownstone apartment, each one labeled with stories her grandmother had told her. Sienna and Daniel arrived late, as usual. Sienna wore a stunning red dress and was in an unusually cheerful mood, practically bouncing with excitement. She kept exchanging knowing glances with Daniel, who wore a smirk that suggested he was in on a secret. As dinner progressed through appetizers and main courses, grandmother Eleanor asked each person to share something they were grateful for. When it came to Maya's turn, she spoke softly about how moving into the brownstone had made her feel closer to her family's roots, how she discovered old letters between her grandparents that made her laugh and cry. Grandmother Eleanor's eyes glistened with happy tears. That's exactly what I hoped for, dear. You understand what those places mean. Then it was Sienna's turn. She stood up, even though no one else had, and cleared her throat dramatically like she was about to make a grand announcement. Grandmother, Sienna began, her voice artificially bright, I am so grateful for your incredible generosity. The lake house has been absolutely amazing. She paused for effect, her smile widening. In fact, I have some exciting news to share. Daniel and I have been doing a lot of thinking about our future, about experiences and personal growth, and we've made a big decision. Maya felt a knot forming in her stomach. Something about Sienna's tone felt wrong. We've decided to sell the lake house, Sienna announced, as if she'd just won an award. The market is incredible right now, and we've already got an offer. We're going to use the money for a life-changing trip through Europe. 2 months of culture, art, history, and adventure. Isn't that amazing? The room went completely silent. The clinking of silverware stopped. Even the waiter who had been pouring water froze mid-pour. Grandmother Eleanor's face, which had been warm and smiling moments before, turned to stone. The color drained from her cheeks, and her hand trembled slightly as she set down her wine glass. You're selling it? Eleanor's voice was barely a whisper. Sienna, completely oblivious to the atmosphere she'd created, continued enthusiastically. Yes. I mean, grandmother, you have to understand. It's just sitting there empty. Daniel and I calculated that we're actually losing money on property taxes and maintenance. It makes so much more sense to liquidate the asset and invest in experiences. You always taught us to be smart with money, right? Daniel nodded supportively, squeezing Sienna's hand. It's really the financially responsible thing to do, Mrs. Martinez. Maya stared at her sister in disbelief. Sienna, grandmother specifically said these properties weren't meant to be sold. They're family legacy. Sienna waved her hand dismissively. Oh, Maya, don't be so dramatic. Things change. This isn't the 1950s anymore. Besides, it's legally mine now. I can do whatever I want with it. She turned back to their grandmother with a patronizing smile. You understand, don't you, grandmother? You want me to be happy and see the world, right? The silence that followed was deafening. All eyes were on grandmother Eleanor. The old woman sat very still, her hands folded in her lap. Her eyes, usually so warm and full of life, had become cold and calculating. Those who knew her well recognized this look. It was the same expression she'd worn decades ago when she built her real estate empire from nothing. The look of a woman who didn't get to where she was by being soft. When grandmother Eleanor finally spoke, her voice was calm, almost pleasant, which somehow made it more terrifying. I see, she said simply, nodding slowly. How very enlightening. Sienna, mistaking the calm for acceptance, beamed. I knew you'd understand. We're thinking of leaving next month. Paris first, then. Excuse me for a moment, grandmother Eleanor interrupted gently, reaching for her purse. I need to make a quick phone call. Old age. I need to take care of something before I forget. She pulled out her smartphone. Yes, the 80-year-old woman was more tech-savvy than most people half her age, and stepped away from the table toward the window. Sienna turned to Daniel triumphantly. See, I told you she'd be fine with it. Maya shook her head, her face pale. Sienna, I don't think you understand what you've just done. Oh, please, Maya. Stop being such a drama queen. Sienna rolled her eyes. Just because you're content living in that old, cramped apartment doesn't mean I have to waste my opportunities. At the window, grandmother Eleanor's fingers moved swiftly across her phone screen. She made 3 phone calls, each lasting less than a minute. Her face remained perfectly composed, but there was a slight smile playing at the corners of her lips. The smile of someone who had just set something irreversible into motion. When she returned to the table, grandmother Eleanor's demeanor was gracious and composed. She raised her wine glass. Well, my dear Sienna, I want to congratulate you on your European adventure. I hope it brings you everything you deserve. The way she emphasized the word deserve made Maya shiver. Sienna, completely missing the subtle threat, clinked glasses enthusiastically. Thank you, grandmother. I'll send you tons of pictures. Oh, I'm sure the next few weeks will be very educational for you, grandmother Eleanor said with that same mysterious smile. Very educational indeed. The next morning, Sienna woke up to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. Still groggy, she reached for her phone on the nightstand, squinting at the bright screen. The first message was from her real estate agent. Urgent, call me immediately. There's a problem with the property sale. Her heart skipped a beat. She sat up quickly, waking Daniel beside her. What's wrong? He mumbled, still half asleep. I don't know, Sienna said, her fingers trembling as she scrolled through the messages. They were from the agent, from the title company, from the buyer's attorney, all marked urgent. She called her real estate agent, Patricia, who answered on the first ring. Sienna, where have you been? I've been trying to reach you all morning. Patricia's usually calm voice was strained. I was sleeping. What's going on? Is there a problem with the closing? A problem? Sienna, the sale is completely dead. Cancelled. Finished. What? But we were supposed to close next week. The buyer already put down earnest money. Patricia sighed heavily. That's the thing, Sienna. It turns out you don't actually own the lake house. Not completely. Sienna's blood ran cold. What are you talking about? My grandmother gave it to me. There was a deed transfer and everything. Yes, there was a deed transfer, Patricia confirmed. But apparently, when your grandmother gifted you the property, she retained something called a life estate. Do you know what that means? No, what does that mean? It means that while the property is technically in your name, your grandmother retained the right to live there and, more importantly, the right to approve or disapprove any sale of the property during her lifetime. It's buried in the legal documents. Most people don't read the fine print carefully. Sienna felt like the room was spinning. So, I can't sell it. Not without her written permission, no. And apparently, as of last night, your grandmother's attorney sent a formal letter to the title company explicitly revoking any permission for sale. The buyer is furious. They're threatening to sue for breach of contract because you wasted their time. Sienna dropped the phone, her hands shaking. Daniel sat up fully now, his face alarmed. What happened? What did she say? I can't sell the house, Sienna whispered, her voice hollow. Grandmother has legal control. She blocked the sale. Daniel's face went from concern to angry in seconds. What? How is that even possible? She gave it to you. Apparently there's something called a life estate. She can block any sale. Sienna's eyes filled with tears, but they were tears of frustration and rage, not sadness. That manipulative old woman. She tricked me. Call her, Daniel demanded. Call her right now and fix this. We've already put deposits down on hotels. We booked flights. Sienna grabbed her phone with trembling fingers and dialed her grandmother's number. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Finally, Grandmother Eleanor answered, her voice calm and pleasant. Good morning, Sienna dear. I was expecting your call. Grandmother, what have you done? Sienna's voice cracked. The real estate agent said you blocked the sale. You can't do this. Can I? Eleanor's voice remained infuriatingly calm. Actually, my dear, I can. When I gifted you that property, I made sure to protect it legally. I had hoped I'd never need to use that protection, but you've shown me exactly why I was right to include it. But you gave it to me. It's mine. Sienna was practically screaming now. I gave it to you to cherish, to preserve, to honor your family's legacy. Eleanor's voice turned cold. I gave it to you with the explicit instruction not to sell it. You agreed to those terms at my birthday celebration 3 months ago. Do you remember what you said? You promised to take care of it. That was just... I didn't think you actually meant forever. That's unreasonable. Is it? Eleanor asked quietly. Is it unreasonable to expect my granddaughter to honor her word? To respect her family's history? To value something more than its monetary worth? Sienna's tears were flowing freely now. Please, grandmother. We've already made plans. We've put down deposits. We need this money. No, Sienna. You want this money. There's a significant difference between needs and wants, something you've never learned. Eleanor paused. Here's what's going to happen. You may keep the lake house, but you cannot sell it during my lifetime. You can live in it, rent it out if you wish, or let it sit empty. That's your choice. But you will not profit from selling my family's legacy to fund a vacation. This isn't fair. Sienna sobbed. Life rarely is, my dear. Consider this a lesson in reading contracts before you sign them, and in keeping promises you make to people who love you. Eleanor's voice softened slightly. Goodbye, Sienna. I hope someday you'll understand why I did this. The line went dead. Sienna collapsed on the bed, crying hysterically. Daniel paced the room, his face red with anger. This is unbelievable, he shouted. That old woman has no right. She has every right. Sienna screamed back. It's in the legal documents. I can't do anything. Daniel stopped pacing and stared at her coldly. So let me get this straight. You bragged about having a $500,000 property. We made plans based on that money. And now you're telling me we have nothing. Something in his tone made Sienna look up. What are you saying? I'm saying that I put a lot into this relationship expecting a certain lifestyle. I quit a job opportunity in Miami to stay here with you. I've been patient while you figured out your career. And you promised me this trip, Sienna. You promised. I didn't know this would happen. Sienna's voice was desperate. Well, it did happen. And now what? Daniel grabbed his jacket from the chair. I need some air. I need to think. Daniel, wait. But he was already out the door, slamming it behind him. That same afternoon, Maya received a text from her grandmother. Dear Maya, would you like to come for tea this afternoon? I have something I'd like to discuss with you. Maya arrived at her grandmother's elegant townhouse, the one Eleanor had kept for herself in the heart of the historic district. The old woman greeted her with a warm hug and led her to the sunroom, where tea and small sandwiches were already prepared. Thank you for coming on such short notice, Eleanor said, pouring chamomile tea into delicate china cups. Of course, grandmother. Is everything all right? I heard about what happened with Sienna. Eleanor nodded slowly. I suppose the whole family has heard by now. Your Aunt Patricia called me this morning, quite upset with me. She thinks I was too harsh. Maya chose her words carefully. Sienna was planning to sell the lake house against your wishes. You had every right to stop her. Yes, I did. But that's not what I wanted to talk to you about. Eleanor set down her teacup and looked directly at Maya. I wanted to talk about you, dear. About the brownstone. Maya's heart skipped. Have I done something wrong? I've been taking care of it, I promise. I fixed the leak in the bathroom, and I repainted the... Eleanor held up her hand with a gentle smile. No, my dear. Quite the opposite. I've been watching how you've honored that property. The dinner parties you host for the neighbors, just like I used to. The way you've preserved every detail, every memory. The community garden you started in the backyard. Maya blushed. I love that apartment, grandmother. It feels like home. Like I'm connected to you and grandfather, even though I never met him. Eleanor's eyes misted over. You remind me so much of him, you know. He never cared about money or status. He cared about people, about community, about making a difference. She reached across the table and took Maya's hand. I want to tell you something, and I need you to listen carefully. Maya nodded, squeezing her grandmother's weathered hand. The brownstone apartment I gave you, I told you it was modest, and it is compared to the lake house. But what I didn't tell you is that the land it sits on has been rezoned. That entire block is now designated for historic preservation and commercial development. Maya looked confused. I don't understand. What does that mean? Eleanor smiled. It means, my dear, that your modest brownstone apartment is actually sitting on property worth nearly $3 million. Developers have been calling me for years, wanting to buy it. I always refused. Maya's jaw dropped. $3 million? Yes. And unlike Sienna's property, I gave yours to you with no strings attached. No life estate, no restrictions. It's entirely yours to do with as you wish. Eleanor's eyes twinkled. You could sell it tomorrow and be wealthy beyond your dreams. Maya sat in stunned silence, her tea growing cold in her cup. The question is, Eleanor continued softly, what will you do with that knowledge? Maya sat in silence for a long moment, processing her grandmother's words. $3 million. The number seemed impossible, surreal. She thought about her small salary at the nonprofit, how she sometimes ate ramen noodles for dinner to make ends meet, how she'd been wearing the same winter coat for 5 years. Finally, she looked up at her grandmother with tears in her eyes. I'm not going to sell it, Maya said quietly. Eleanor's expression didn't change, but she leaned forward slightly. Are you certain? I'm not testing you, Maya. That money could change your life. You could quit your job, travel the world, never worry about bills again. Maya shook her head, a small smile forming. It is changing my life, grandmother. But not because of what it's worth in money. That apartment, it's where I feel closest to our family. It's where I've built a community. Mrs. Chen from next door brings me soup when I'm sick. The Rodriguez kids do their homework at my kitchen table after school because both their parents work late. On Sundays, we have potluck dinners and everyone shares their stories. Her voice grew stronger. If I sold it, some developer would tear it down and build luxury condos that nobody in that neighborhood could afford. Mrs. Chen would have to move. The Rodriguez family would lose their support system. All those connections, all that history, gone. For what? So I can have money in a bank account. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears, and she squeezed Maya's hand tightly. You have no idea how proud you've just made me. I learned from the best, Maya said softly. You always taught us that wealth isn't just about money. It's about what you build, what you give, what you leave behind. Eleanor wiped her eyes with her napkin, composing herself. There's something else I want to tell you. I've been working with my attorney on my will. When I pass, and yes, we need to talk about these things, the bulk of my estate will be divided equally among my children and grandchildren. But there's one exception. She reached into a folder on the side table and pulled out a document. I'm establishing a trust fund specifically for you. $2 million to be used for one purpose: creating affordable housing projects, community centers, or social programs. You'll have full control over how it's spent, but it must serve the community. Maya's hands flew to her mouth. Grandmother, I don't know what to say. Say you'll use it wisely. Say you'll continue being exactly who you are. Eleanor smiled. And say you'll come to tea more often. I enjoy our talks. They embraced, and Maya left her grandmother's house feeling overwhelmed, but deeply at peace with her decision. Meanwhile, across town, Sienna's life was unraveling like a cheap sweater. Daniel had returned to the apartment that evening, but he was different. Cold. Distant. He spent most of his time on his phone, barely speaking to her. We need to talk, he finally said 3 days later. Sienna looked up from her laptop, where she'd been desperately searching for personal loans. About what? About us. Daniel sat down across from her, his posture stiff. This isn't working, Sienna. Her heart sank. What do you mean? I thought we were building something together. A lifestyle. A future. But you don't have anything. Your job barely pays enough to cover your expenses. You have no savings. And that house, the one asset you actually had, you can't even access. So you're breaking up with me because I'm not rich enough? Sienna's voice was shrill with disbelief. Daniel shrugged. I'm being practical. I'm 35 years old. I need stability. I need a partner who brings something to the table. I bring myself. I bring love. Isn't that worth something? Love doesn't pay for the lifestyle I want, Daniel said flatly. He stood up and grabbed a duffel bag from the closet. Apparently he'd already packed. I'm staying with Marcus for a while. You should probably find a roommate. This apartment is expensive for one person. Sienna watched in shock as he walked toward the door. Daniel, please. We can figure this out. I'll get a better job, Goodbye, Sienna. The door closed behind him with a decisive click. Sienna sat alone in her apartment, surrounded by designer clothes and expensive furniture. Most of it bought on credit cards she could barely afford to pay. She looked around at her carefully curated Instagram-worthy life and realized how empty it all was. Her phone buzzed. Another credit card bill. Past due. She'd been using one card to pay another, a dangerous cycle she couldn't maintain much longer. Then another notification, her job. Sienna, we need to discuss your performance. Please see me first thing Monday morning. She'd been distracted lately, missing deadlines, showing up late. She could feel it coming. She was about to lose her job too. Sienna opened Instagram, where she had over 15,000 followers. She scrolled through her old posts, designer handbags, fancy restaurant meals, luxury gym selfies, and that one viral post about the lake house with the caption, "Grateful for my family's legacy." The comments on that post had changed recently. People had somehow found out about her attempt to sell it. The new comments were cruel. So much for family legacy, lol. Fake rich people are the worst. Your grandmother is a legend for stopping you. Someone had even made a TikTok about her situation. It had 2 million views. Humiliated, Sienna deleted the app from her phone. Then she did something she hadn't done in years. She cried. Really cried. Not pretty tears for sympathy, but ugly, gasping sobs of genuine despair. 2 weeks later, Sienna found herself standing outside Maya's brownstone apartment. She'd lost her job, her boyfriend, and was about to lose her apartment. She had nowhere else to turn. She knocked hesitantly. Maya opened the door, surprise evident on her face. Sienna? What are you doing here? Can I come in? Please. Sienna's voice was small, defeated. Maya stepped aside, and Sienna entered the warm, cozy apartment. It smelled like fresh bread and coffee. A children's book lay open on the coffee table, and there were photographs everywhere, Real printed photographs, not just digital ones. Would you like some tea? Maya offered, her voice cautious but not unkind. Yes, please. Sienna sat on the worn but comfortable couch. As Maya prepared tea in the kitchen, Sienna looked around. The apartment was small, old, nothing like her own modern place. But it felt like a home. Real. Lived in. Loved. Maya returned with 2 steaming mugs and sat across from her sister. "So, what brings you here?" Sienna stared into her tea. "Everything fell apart, Maya. Daniel left me. I lost my job. I'm about to lose my apartment. The lake house just sits there, empty, and I can't sell it or even afford to maintain it properly." She looked up, her eyes red. "I messed up everything." Maya sipped her tea, saying nothing. "And the worst part," Sienna continued, her voice breaking, "is that I finally understand what grandmother was trying to tell me. It wasn't about the house. It was about who I am, who I've become." She wiped her eyes. "I threw away something priceless for nothing. For a vacation. For Instagram posts. For a boyfriend who never actually loved me. Why are you telling me this?" Maya asked gently. "Because I need help. But more than that, I need to apologize." Sienna set down her mug with shaking hands. "I've been terrible to you. I've mocked your job, your lifestyle, your choices. I thought I was better than you because I had designer clothes and you shopped at thrift stores. I thought you were naive and stupid for working at a nonprofit when you could have made more money elsewhere." She took a shaky breath. "But you were the smart one all along. You understood what actually matters. And I was too blind and shallow to see it." Maya's eyes softened. "Sienna." "No, let me finish." Sienna wiped her tears. "I don't deserve your help. I don't deserve grandmother's forgiveness. But I'm asking anyway because I don't know what else to do. I'm drowning, Maya. And I'm scared." The room fell silent except for the ticking of an old clock on the wall. Finally, Maya spoke. "You can stay here." Sienna's head snapped up. "What?" "You can stay here. I have a spare room. It's small, but it's yours if you need it. No rent, not until you get back on your feet." "Maya, I can't." "Yes, you can. You're my sister." Maya's voice was firm. "But there are conditions." Sienna nodded quickly. "Anything. You need to see a therapist. Deal with whatever made you so obsessed with appearances and status. And you need to find real work. I don't mean prestigious work. I mean honest work that actually helps people or contributes something meaningful." "I will. I promise." "And," Maya continued, "you need to apologize to grandmother. A real apology. Not because you want something from her, but because she deserves it." Sienna nodded, fresh tears streaming down her face. "Okay. Yes. Thank you, Maya. Thank you so much." 3 months passed. Sienna moved into Maya's spare room with just 2 suitcases. Most of her designer possessions had been sold to pay off her credit card debt. The room was tiny, with barely enough space for a single bed and a small dresser, but it had a window that let in morning light, and that was enough. The first few weeks were humbling. Sienna had to adjust to a life without luxury. Cooking meals at home instead of eating out, taking the bus instead of Ubers, buying clothes from consignment shops. But slowly, something unexpected happened. She started to feel lighter. Freer. Maya helped her find a job at the nonprofit where she worked, starting in the administrative department. The pay was modest, barely a third of what Sienna used to make. But the work was real. She helped process applications for homeless families seeking emergency housing, coordinated donation drives, and answered calls from people in crisis. One day, a young mother came in with 2 small children, everything they owned stuffed into garbage bags. Sienna helped her fill out paperwork for temporary housing. The woman was crying, apologizing for being a burden, and Sienna found herself crying too, but not for herself this time. "You're not a burden," Sienna said softly, handing her tissues. "You're brave for asking for help. That takes real strength." After the woman left with her children, Maya put a hand on Sienna's shoulder. "You did good today." Those 4 words meant more to Sienna than any social media likes ever had. Sienna also started seeing Dr. Chun, a therapist Maya recommended. In their sessions, Sienna slowly unpacked years of insecurity, her desperate need for external validation, her fear of being seen as less than. Dr. Chun helped her understand that her obsession with luxury and status had been armor, protection against feeling worthless inside. "The question is," Dr. Chun asked during one session, "who are you without the armor? When you strip away the designer labels and the Instagram followers, who is Sienna?" Sienna didn't have an answer yet, but she was starting to look. 6 months after that painful birthday dinner, Grandmother Eleanor invited both granddaughters to her townhouse for Sunday brunch. Sienna's hands trembled as she rang the doorbell. Eleanor opened the door herself, looking elegant as always in a lavender cardigan and pearls. Her expression was neutral as she looked at Sienna. "Hello, grandmother," Sienna said quietly. "Sienna, come in." They sat in the sunroom, where light streamed through tall windows. Eleanor poured coffee with steady hands, but said nothing, waiting. Sienna set down her cup carefully. "Grandmother, I came here to apologize. A real apology, not because I want anything, but because you deserve to hear it." Eleanor's eyebrow raised slightly, but she remained silent. "I was selfish, entitled, and disrespectful," Sienna continued, her voice steady despite the tears forming in her eyes. "You gave me a precious gift, not just a property, but a piece of our family's history, and I treated it like it was nothing more than a bank account to raid. I broke my promise to you. I broke your trust." She took a shaky breath. "Worse than that, I've spent years being shallow and materialistic. I valued things that don't matter and ignored the things that do. I hurt Maya with my judgment. I hurt you with my choices. And I hurt myself by building a life based on appearances instead of substance." Eleanor's expression softened slightly, but she still said nothing. "I'm working at Maya's nonprofit now," Sienna said. "I'm making barely enough money to cover my phone bill. I live in a room the size of a closet. My ex-boyfriend is dating an heiress he met at a spin class." She smiled through her tears. "And I'm happier than I've been in years. Because for the first time in my life, I'm doing something that actually matters. I'm helping people. Real people with real problems." "Go on," Eleanor said softly. "I can't undo what I did. I can't take back trying to sell the lake house. But I want you to know that I finally understand what you were trying to teach me. Legacy isn't about money. It's about values. It's about what you build that lasts longer than you do. It's about being someone worth remembering, not for what you owned, but for how you lived." Sienna wiped her eyes. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I just needed you to know that I finally understand. And I'm trying, really trying, to become someone you could be proud of." The room was silent for a long moment. Then Eleanor stood up slowly and walked over to Sienna. She cupped her granddaughter's face in her weathered hands. "My dear girl," Eleanor said, her own eyes glistening, "I never stopped loving you. I was disappointed in your choices, yes. Angry even. But I never stopped loving you." She kissed Sienna's forehead. "And I'm proud of you now. Not because you're poor or because you've suffered, but because you've grown. Because you've learned. Because you've become humble enough to change." Sienna collapsed into her grandmother's arms, sobbing. Eleanor held her, stroking her hair like she used to when Sienna was a little girl. When Sienna finally pulled away, wiping her face, Eleanor returned to her seat with a small smile. "Now then, I have something to tell you both." Maya, who had been quietly watching from the corner, moved closer. "As you know, I'm getting older," Eleanor began. "I've been thinking about my legacy, the real legacy, not just money and property. I've decided to make some changes to my will." Sienna's stomach dropped. This was it. She was being written out of the will. She deserved it. "Maya," Eleanor turned to her, "you've proven that you understand what true wealth means. Your trust fund will remain as planned, to be used for community development. But I'm also leaving you this townhouse. I trust you'll use it wisely." Maya gasped. "Grandmother, I..." Eleanor held up her hand. "Let me finish." She turned to Sienna. "As for you, my dear, the lake house is still legally yours. However, I'm removing the life estate restriction." Sienna's eyes widened. "You mean?" "Yes. You can sell it if you choose to. It's worth about $600,000 now. The market has gone up." Eleanor's gaze was penetrating. "The question is, what will you do with that freedom?" Sienna sat very still. $600,000. It was more than enough to restart her old life. Get a luxury apartment. New wardrobe. Travel the world. Return to the person she used to be. Everyone waited. Finally, Sienna spoke, her voice clear and certain. "I'm going to keep it." Eleanor's eyebrows rose. "Are you certain?" "Yes." Sienna nodded. "I'm going to keep it, but I'm not going to let it sit empty anymore. I talked to my supervisor at the nonprofit, and she said there's a huge need for transitional housing. Places where homeless families can stay for a few months while they get back on their feet. The lake house has 5 bedrooms. It could help so many people." Her words came faster now, filled with genuine excitement. "I could set up a program where families stay there temporarily, and we provide job training, childcare support, financial literacy classes. The location is perfect, close enough to the city for work opportunities, but peaceful, with a lake for kids to play. A real home, even if it's temporary. Maya's face lit up. Sienna, that's a wonderful idea. I'd need help setting it up, Sienna said, looking at her sister. I don't know anything about running a program like that, but if you'd be willing to guide me. Of course, Maya said immediately. We can do it together. Grandmother Eleanor sat back in her chair, a satisfied smile spreading across her face. Now that, she said softly, is a legacy worth leaving. 5 years later, the lake house had been transformed. The old cabin now bustled with life. A mother teaching her daughter to fish off the dock, a father chopping vegetables in the renovated kitchen while his son did homework at the table, a toddler taking her first steps across the living room floor. Sienna stood on the porch, watching the sunset paint the lake in shades of gold and pink. She wore jeans and a simple sweater, no designer labels, but she felt more herself than she ever had in her expensive clothes. Miss Sienna, a little boy called out, running up to her. Look what I caught. He held up a small fish, his face beaming with pride. That's amazing, Marcus. Sienna knelt down to admire it properly. Your mom is going to be so proud. Marcus's mother, Jessica, walked over with a grateful smile. She'd come to the Lake House program 2 years ago, homeless and hopeless after fleeing an abusive relationship. Now she had a steady job as a nursing assistant and was saving for her own apartment. Thank you again for everything, Jessica said, her eyes sincere. This place saved our lives. Literally. You saved your own life, Sienna replied. You did the hard work. We just gave you a safe place to do it. Maya's car pulled up the gravel driveway. She got out, along with grandmother Eleanor, who at 85 was still sharp and active, though she walked with an elegant cane now. Grandmother. Sienna rushed down to help her up the porch steps. I didn't know you were coming today. I wanted to see how the new playground was coming along, Eleanor said, her eyes twinkling. Maya tells me you raised enough donations to build it. We did. The community really came together. It should be finished next month. They walked through the house together, Eleanor observing everything with keen eyes. The walls were covered with children's artwork and family photos. The kitchen, once pristine and unused, was warm and messy with the evidence of actual cooking. The living room had comfortable, worn furniture perfect for real living, not just for show. You've honored this place, Eleanor said finally. Not by keeping it perfect and untouched, but by filling it with life and love and purpose. This is exactly what I hoped for. That evening, after the families had settled in for the night, the 3 women sat on the dock, their feet dangling over the water. The stars were beginning to appear in the darkening sky. I got accepted into the social work master's program, Sienna announced quietly. I start in the fall. Sienna, that's wonderful. Maya hugged her sister. I'm so proud of you. I'm proud of me too, Sienna said, and she meant it. I never thought I'd say that without talking about money or status or achievements. But I'm proud of who I'm becoming. Eleanor squeezed both her granddaughter's hands. You know what the real treasure is? It's not the properties or the money. It's seeing both of you understand what truly matters. Maya, you always knew. Sienna, you learned. Both paths led you here, to this moment, to this purpose. I'm sorry it took me so long to understand, Sienna said softly. Don't apologize for the journey, Eleanor replied. Sometimes we need to lose everything to find out what's really valuable. Your struggles weren't wasted. They made you who you are now. They sat in comfortable silence as the lake rippled gently beneath them. Inside the house, lights glowed warmly in the windows. A child's laughter echoed across the water. Somewhere, a mother sang a lullaby. Grandmother, Maya said thoughtfully, what made you decide to teach us this way? You could have just told us what mattered. Eleanor smiled. Because wisdom can't be taught, my dear. It has to be lived. I could tell you 1,000 times that material things don't bring happiness, but until you experience it yourself, the words are meaningless. She looked at Sienna. Sometimes the greatest gift a grandmother can give is not her wealth, but the chance to discover true wealth for yourself. Even if that discovery is painful? Sienna asked. Especially then, Eleanor said. The lessons that hurt are the ones we never forget. As the moon rose over Crystal Lake, casting silver light across the water, Sienna thought about the girl she used to be. The one obsessed with designer labels and Instagram followers, the one who would have sold this precious place for a vacation. That girl seemed like a stranger now. She looked at the house behind her, filled with families rebuilding their lives. She thought about Marcus's proud smile when he caught his first fish. She remembered Jessica's tears of gratitude. She pictured the playground that would be finished next month, where children would laugh and play and just be children, safe and cared for. She thought, this is what legacy really means. And so, 2 granddaughters received 2 gifts. One understood the value immediately. The other had to lose everything to learn it. But in the end, both found their true purpose, not in what they owned, but in what they gave. The real question is, if you were given a precious gift, would you honor it or exploit it? Would you see its true value, or just its price tag? Sometimes the greatest inheritance isn't money or property. It's the wisdom to know the difference. What did you think of this story, friends? Which city are you watching from? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story touched your heart or taught you something valuable, please consider sending a super thanks. It helps us bring you more meaningful stories like this one. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss our next story. Remember, true wealth isn't measured in bank accounts. It's measured in the lives you touch and the legacy you leave behind. Until next time, may you always recognize the real treasures in your life before it's too late.